The Wailing is a 2016 released horror thriller directed by Na Hong Yin.
It's based in a sort of small rural village in South Korea. In this little village, there's some strange murders occurring. It sort of coincides with the arrival of a mysterious Japanese gentleman who lives in a little cabin in the woods. These killings seem to be related to a strange like a disease or an illness that temporarily makes the sufferers of it commit frenzied killings. There's a policeman who by the name of Jong-gu, who's part of the investigation team looking into these killings. After a few days, his daughter seems to be coming down with this illness and starts behaving a bit strangely, almost like she's possessed. And of course, then his investigation into this situation ramps up. Yeah, there's talk about this strange Japanese guy, and there's a hunter who claims to have witnessed him eating a deer, a dead deer, not a cooked one. A freshly killed raw one, and claims to have seen him running around almost naked, chomping on this deer and with flaming red eyes and things like that. So yeah, they think that maybe he's got something to do with it. Yeah, the story goes on from there. Sort of lots of bizarre, ritualistic kind of things, and it's got kind of sort of possession and exorcism kind of stuff in it, and there's shamans and all sorts of strange things going on.
Kind of like The Exorcist in the countryside a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of Seven in there, I thought, as well.
It's very dark and wet, and the kind of atmosphere feels quite like Seven at times. And then I think there's a lot of, there's kind of Exorcist moments going on in there. There's a moment quite near the beginning of the film which really reminded The Exorcist, just before things kind of start ramping up, when Jong-gu is in his house with his family, and they hear like some scratching in the attic or on the roof, isn't it? Which is very similar to a scene in The Exorcist. That a very similar thing happens at the very beginning of the film, where they hear like rats or something in the attic, which is a sign for something not right happening very soon. I think this is quite an interesting film because it's very long.
It is, yeah. It's like 2.5 hours or something. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
for a horror film.
For a horror film, it's quite unusual.
I mean, I don't know how long The Exorcist. That's quite a long film, isn't it?
It's a couple of hours.
Yeah.
I can check on the shelf. Hold on.
Oh, I like it. We don't have this usually.
There we go. It is. Well, it depends what cut you're watching, but it's 2 hours or just over 2 hours if you're watching the director's cut. There you go.
Right. Love it. No Wikipedia this week. We've got the real thing to the side of the screen. That's really good. This film is quite odd actually because it starts off very light-hearted, but very light-hearted. It's got
He's a bit of a buffoon. Well, not a buffoon. I don't know. Maybe that's a strong word, but he's a bit.
He's a bit of a bumbling cop in a way.
Yeah, kind of.
Which is quite odd, and there's some quite amusing moments. And I mean, it's quite a nice way to set him up as a character, I suppose. You kind of set him up with him and his wife. Although there's a moment in the beginning of the film which I couldn't quite work out. I've watched it a couple of times now. Is when he has sex with his wife, but they like have sex in the car, and it's like he's having an affair. He's having like some illicit romance, and it's just his wife.
Well, I think if you look at their house, it's quite sort of open planish, and
true.
they've got just the thin sliding doors and probably quite thin walls. And he obviously they live with his daughter and his mother-in-law.
That's true. That's true. But I just thought
when they're in the car, the daughter still comes and knocks on the window.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a very funny scene because he's an older bloke now, and he's got a bit of weight on him as well, and he's obviously no young thing, and he plays off on that, and I thought that was very funny. So it sets it up in a very kind of light-hearted, quite amusing tone, and then suddenly it just kind of goes.
Yeah, it goes
and
really
it becomes
dark.
really dark, and I really enjoyed it, and I've seen it. I've seen it a couple of times now. Like I said, it's really kind of hallucinogenic. The film, I think, in times, and it goes to some really strange places. I mean, it's one of those films we don't really want to give away, but I thought it goes to some quite interesting and freaky places that you're not expecting. I mean, there's a few twists and turns through there as well. This is our fourth South Korean film. We've done not really a month of them because we've had a bit of a break now in the last couple of weeks. But we did 4 South Korean films. And one thing I've noticed while watching all of them is the cinematography in all of them. I think the cinematography is like really, really good. Really like, it's, and this one almost more so. And I think obviously it helps because it's set in the countryside. So you get a lot of kind of, vistas and trees.
Lots of fog and rolling clouds and
exactly, yeah,
menacing sort of things going on.
The cinematographer in this film was Hong Kyung-pyo. He actually was the cinematographer on Parasite and Snowpiercer and Mother. He did as well. Of course, we spoke about Mother a few weeks ago now. These films, they look they look stunning. I mean,
yeah.
it's very photographic. It's very film-like. I mean, obviously the country is very beautiful as well. You know, talking about Seven, this feels very wet, and that kind of,
Yeah,
it's
it rains a
misty
lot.
and a lot of rain again.
Yeah, it seems to be a theme in a lot of Korean movies where it just rains quite a lot. I mean, obviously, Parasite's quite important to the plot that it does rain.
Yeah,
Even Mother, while the rain doesn't feature heavily, it does again that creates a pivotal moment that affects things later on. I mean, A Bittersweet Life that we talked about, that there was a lengthy scene with rain in that, although I think that was more just to make it look cool. It didn't serve the plot that I can remember.
if you watched our interview that we did with Nick, our friend Nick
Mm.
who lives in Korea, we did mention about the rain in that, although he didn't give the answer I think we were perhaps looking for. He just kind of suggested that it rains. It
Yeah,
has a rainy season,
and when it rains, it really
and when it
rains.
rains, it really rains. Yeah,
Yeah.
but he didn't. I think we were possibly looking for more kind of like a deeper answer about
Yeah. Oh yeah, it just
the
rains all the time.
meaning of rain, and do they
Yeah.
use it in some kind of way? I mean, this is out in the countryside, and of course, if you've been out, I've not been to Korea, I've been to Japan, the similar climates, and if you go out into the countryside there, I went up to a place called Nikko, which is north of Tokyo, and it chucked it down with rain that day, and it had that same kind of, it's very forestry, all the water running off the leaves, very atmospheric, and like this fog coming down the side of the mountain. It's an incredible, powerful feeling, and I think this film really kind of, you get that sense in this film as well, and it really works. It really helps with that. I think this is a really good film. It's proper twisted at times.
I think the fact, as we said, it starts and ends very differently tonally, and I think the length, as we mentioned, it's a long film, and I think that while a lot of the time these days the films are too long, I think that helps this film because it eases you gently into the sort of the dark stuff and the horror that is coming, with almost like with a full sense of security. You're watching something that's not a comedy, but it's not taking itself too seriously. I mean, you could say that maybe the film doesn't know what it wants to be. The first half is more comedic. Well, not the half, maybe the first quarter is a bit comedic, and then it loses that. But it never felt, I think because of the length of the film, it doesn't feel like a jarring change. It feels like a gradual thing. And the main character, he goes on a journey that completely changes him. He starts off this sort of bumbling cop and ends up, well, I won't say where he ends up because it's a spoiler, but he's not a bumbling cop anymore. He is changed by the events that occur quite profoundly.
I agree with you on that point. A lot of films you'll watch, and sometimes they don't know what they want to be. Do they want to be a comedy, or do they want to be? I mean, obviously, horror and comedy go together quite a lot sometimes.
Yeah.
But you do get, sometimes you'll get a film and it'll start in one way and it'll change over to something else, and you feel it change. But this one, you don't feel it change. It is
No.
very odd because the beginning is it's got some quite amusing stuff at the beginning. I mean, I can't.
I mean, where they're where him and his like his partner, isn't it,
Yeah.
are in the office,
Yeah.
and suddenly this like crazy lady is outside,
Yeah.
and suddenly appears at the window, and they like both crap themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's scary, but also funny, because the way they react is in a sort of
Exactly,
comedic
and I
way.
think the way they are, I mean, the way those two are together, and a couple of other, other characters in there. But when it does change over to the more horrific stuff, it doesn't feel like one. It doesn't like snap over. It does it gradually, and I think it works. Strangely, it works for that reason. Yeah, I mean, I recommend checking this one out. Do we have we do have it. You have my DVD of it, don't you?
I do have your DVD because of the lockdown and social distancing. I can't give it back, unfortunately. Sorry about that. But there it is. Yeah, so easily available in the UK. It's got some features on it. A couple of behind the scenes thing. Not very long, and there's a little bit of repeated stuff in them. But it's interesting. To see the behind the scenes stuff, and I think it took quite a long time to film as well.
That's right. It was like
It was in.
6 years in the making or something.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that must include pre-production and
I
post-production,
guess
things
so,
like that. They
yeah.
can't have been filming it for 6 years. I'm not sure, but
No.
there is a Blu-ray in America which has basically the same features on it as well. But that I think is Region A, I believe. There's a French release, which unfortunately is no good if you don't speak French or Korean. And obviously the Korean release, which I think probably isn't English friendly either. So if you do want the Blu-ray, I'll probably go for the US one. I can't remember if it is region A or not, but check that out. If it obviously is region free, then you're good to go, and it can be picked up reasonably cheap.
You can buy it. You can rent it on Amazon.
Yeah, I
you
think
want.
I don't know if it might be on Netflix. If not, I think wasn't it on?
It was on
Was it on
Mubi.
Mubi?
I think it was on
Yeah.
Mubi a few weeks ago,
Right.
or a couple of weeks
Oh, it's
ago.
not
I don't
anymore.
know if it's
Oh,
still
okay.
there now, but
I mean, it could. It's quite possibly it's on Netflix, but we don't have Netflix.
we
so
don't have
we don't bother
Netflix.
to check. Have a look. If it's not, then you're out of luck.
Definitely do. I recommend it if you haven't seen it because it's a really, really good film and it's
Yeah,
long.
definitely.
So we passed quite a couple of hours watching it, 2.5 hours watching it. If you like films like The Exorcist or Seven, or something. I mean, maybe if you like Thirst that we did a couple of weeks ago, and or any Old Boy and things like that, then I reckon there'll be something here for you to enjoy.
Definitely, yeah. Check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was The Wailing, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell for notifications. Come and check some of our other videos out. Come and find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you come back next week for another video.